Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you everyone for coming. I didn't have any particular topic that I had planned to speak from, but if anybody has any questions or any favorite verses you'd like to hear about from Bhagavad Gita, we can discuss that. One thing I always say is that this is called Bhagavad Gita as it is. Hindi mein usko Bhagavad Gita yatharup ko bolte hain, yatharup, as it is. When I first saw this, I thought, that sounds like a very presumptuous title. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Well, what about all the other 100 editions of Bhagavad Gita? Actually, I can say that I read many editions of Bhagavad Gita before I joined Iskcon. Several editions. I can name them, but I will spare you. Or I'll spare them. So, I have to admit that I didn't understand those Bhagavad Gitas. And I can confidently say now, almost half a century later, that the reason I didn't understand those Bhagavad Gitas is because the publishers also didn't understand them. Isko Bhagavad Gita yatharup ko bolte hain. Anyatharup nahi. Those other Bhagavad Gitas were anyatharup. What does that mean? In chapter 4, Krishna says, Evam parampara pratam imam rajarshyo vidahu sakalini hamahata yoga nashtat parantava. This thing was understood by great kings thousands of years ago, even only hundreds of years ago, even 100 or 200 years ago. This was the preserve of the kings. Very noble people, elevated people, high-class people. They cultured knowledge and wisdom from Bhagavad Gita as it is. How they received this in disciplic succession. This is what Krishna himself says. Evam parampara praptam. Paramparagat Bhagavad Gita honi chahiye. So, he also says in the same chapter, Tad vidhi pranipatena prashnena sevaya. There are two methods that you receive this in disciplic succession. What are they? Pariprashna. If you have a question, ask the question. It won't be answered until you ask it. If you have a doubt, voice that doubt. All doubts can be resolved. This is my own personal experience. I have so many doubts. I wasn't a Hindu. I wasn't born this way. But I read this Bhagavad Gita and I studied very carefully and I found that it left no stone unturned, no question unanswered. So pariprashnena, and what else? Sevaya. Sevaya. You have to park your ego outside and you have to be prepared to render some service. Because Krishna says many times throughout Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyam abhijanati, for example, you can understand me only by devotion. Bhaktyaatvananyaya shakya aham evam vidhorjuna. I can be understood as I'm standing before you in my two-armed form, Arjuna, only by bhakti. And twice he says in Bhagavad Gita, once in chapter 9, which is considered to be the essence, and again in chapter 18, where he's recapitulating before the final exam, Manmana bhava, mad bhakto, mad yaji, mam namaskuru. The importance of instructions that are repeated should be explained. When you take a test in school, the teacher writes it on the board. If she writes it on the board twice, then you understand this is going to be important, I should know this. So there are some instructions, including this one, that Krishna does mention at least twice in Bhagavad Gita. And the principle that he can be understood only by devotion, that's very clear throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Not just twice, many times he says this. What's another example? Yoga. Yoga is very popular nowadays. Not real yoga. This is, fitness yoga. Fat reduction yoga. But actual yogi, Krishna says, who knows the verse from the end of chapter 6? Anybody know? Yoginam api sarvesham madhyatenantaratma shraddhavan bhajate yomam seme yuktatamomata. I consider him to be the most properly engaged, who has great faith in me, and who therefore worships me. This is how you understand Bhagavad Gita. You have to do something. So Srila Prabhupada, when he was a householder, how many of us are sannyasis here? Raise your hand if you're in the renounced order of life. Yeah, I didn't think so. Raise your hand if you're practicing strict brahmacharya. Okay, I didn't think so. Everybody's a householder here. When Srila Prabhupada was a householder, he read one verse in Bhagavad Gita from chapter 2. Does anybody know what verse I'm thinking of?
45.
Yes, exactly. Vivyasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. He said, those who are on this path of buddhi yoga or bhakti yoga, they have vyavasayatmika buddhi. Thank you. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Their intelligence doesn't wander. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. And ekeha kurunandana, they're fixed. Bahushaka hinantasya buddhayo vyavasayinam. There are people who are many branched and spaced out, and they do so many things. But somebody who's following my path, he says, that person is fixed. And in particular, Srila Prabhupada read the commentary on this verse from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur emphasized in his commentary on this verse that a disciple has to receive the order of the spiritual master and focus on that order with vyavasayatmika buddhi. And he says, to what extent, he illustrates in his commentary, to what extent you have to do this. Anybody know what he says? Even if I get nothing out of this practice, even if I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, for decades, and I don't feel any result, still, he said, I'm determined that I will fulfill the order of my spiritual master. This kind of devotion, when you have this kind of devotion, that's called vyavasayatmika buddhi. And it's only because of that kind of devotion that we're all sitting here this afternoon. Every single person in this room has somehow come in contact with Bhagavad Gita Yatharup. Because Srila Prabhupada took it upon himself, inspired by that principle, inspired by the order that he received from his spiritual master. What order did Srila Prabhupada receive from his spiritual master? When Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in Kolkata in 1922. At that time, Srila Prabhupada was newlywed, and he was recently graduated from college. And a friend dragged him along to go and meet this saintly person. He wasn't really interested because he'd seen so many so-called sadhus, ganja sadhus. And so he wasn't really enthusiastic, but he went. And as soon as he saw Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Thakur looked at him and said, "You're an educated young man. You know English very well. You should take the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and you should preach it to the English-speaking people." This is before he said hello. This is before he paid his obeisances. In those days he was called Abhay. Abhay paid his obeisances to the saintly person before he could even get up. These words were on his head. And he was listening. He heard Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur speak, and he was very impressed by what he heard. And he thought, this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is in the hands of a very competent person. And hote, he began to associate with the members of the Gaudiya Math. That was the institution founded by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in India before independence. And he became initiated some 11 years later. But even though he was busy as a householder, he never forgot this instruction that he received at the first meeting. And throughout his whole life, he was meditating how to fulfill this order, how to do this. So he was engaging his intelligence. What is our intelligence engaged in? That Krishna has already described. Bahushaka hyanantascha buddhayo avyavasayinam. Those whose intelligence is many-branched, they're not resolute. They have unlimited things to think about. Unlimited modes of sense gratification. Every day brings a new mode of sense gratification, and we waste our whole lives like this. We spend our senses and time spends us. And then we die. Dhanani bhumao pashabascha goshte. Your car stays in the garage. Your money stays in the bank. Nadi grihadware janaha smashane. Your wife will not exit the house if she knows religious principles. Your friends may come to your funeral, even if they don't want to, but they'll do it out of etiquette. Dehaschitayam. Your body will go as far as the chitta. Paraloka marge karmanugo gachiti jiva eka. Akhir jana padega. In the end, you have to go alone. No, akela. And because you've walked the path of karma, we waste our lives engaging in so much sense gratification. It doesn't get us anywhere at the time of death. All you've done is run up a big tab. They tap you on the shoulder, and Chitragupta says, "Excuse me, sir, we need to discuss your karmic debits and credits here. You need to balance your account." But Shankaracharya says, Bhagavad Gita kinchit adhita, if you've studied Bhagavad Gita even a little bit. Ganga jala lava karnika pita, if you've taken even a drop of Ganga water on your tongue. Sakritapi yena murari samarcha, if you've tried to nicely worship Murari, even once. Kriyate yasya yamena na charcha. You don't have to have an interview with Yamaraj. This is Bhagavad Gita. So, Vyavasayatmika buddhi means we find someone who inspires faith in us. Someone who is close enough to us that we can relate, but elevated above us in terms of faith. In other words, that person's faith is much deeper than ours. Because actually spiritual advancement means deep faith. The deeper your faith, the more advanced you become. We don't have much faith. That's why we cannot advance. Our faith is in sense gratification. Our faith is in the fallible soldiers that we surround ourselves with. Everybody has his own personal security force. What does that security force consist of? Anybody know the verse I'm thinking of? Deha apatya kalatra adishu atma sainyeshu asatsu api. Even though we see that the body is temporary, the wife, the children, the family, the friends, the prestige, the society, the career, all the things that we chase after in our material dream. Even in Waterhaven. This place is called Waterhaven, right? It pays to be observant. So, all the things that we chase after and invest our lives in, invest our intelligence, our faith, our attention, our love, we invest in these things, but they're asatsu. Atma sainyeshu asatsu api. Even though they're temporary, tesham pramatta nithanam pashyannapi na pashyati. We are so mad after fulfilling our material desires that we ignore impending death, we ignore the fact that these things don't really satisfy us. We ignore all that, and we see, but we don't see. Everyone will admit, no one in this room will deny, we all have to die one day. How many people in this room are doing something about it? What's your strategic plan? Raise your hand if you have children. Anybody have children? Raise your hand. Okay, raise your hand now if you have no intention to educate your children. Yeah, see, everybody's making a plan for that. Because you can see it. But things that we can't see, we don't have faith in those things, isn't it? How many people have made a plan for your child's spiritual emancipation? Or for your own, for that matter? No. Therefore we say, Pashyannapi na pashyati. Not we say, Shukdev Goswami says. Even seeing that they're dropping like flies around us, we don't see. What is the most wonderful thing, according to Mahabharata, Yudhishthira Maharaj? Ahani ahani bhutani gachanti hayamalaya. How many, countless, hundreds, thousands, they're all marching off into the abode of death every day. We see it. Gachanti iha yamalaya. But Sheshas tavaram icchanti. The rest of us want to stay here. As if we actually could do that. Kimascharima taparam. What could be more wonderful than this? This is a great wonder. What are we thinking? We're not thinking. We're just tesham pramatta nitanam. We're mad after attaining a goal that cannot be attained. What do we call this? I hate to say it. Envy. It's envy. Krishna has that position. He can enjoy all the assets, all the facilities, everything he wants forever. No threat. No, absolutely none. We would love that. And that's what we're chasing after, even though we know and we hear that it cannot be. This is a wasted life. So Vyavasayatrika Buddhi, Srila Prabhupada acted on that. He said, I'm only one Indian. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ne kaha, uski agya di, ki bharata bhumi te hoilo manusya janmajar, janma shartha kori, goroparapakar. Those who have taken birth in India in particular, they have the responsibility to do two things. First thing, this is order of operations, order of priority here. First thing, you have to assimilate this thing. You have to realize, janma sarthak kori, make your life perfect first. Then you can actually karoparapakar. You can do something. You can do some welfare for the rest of the world. When I was a child, I used to see sometimes Indians would come to America. In those days, there were dhotiwalas. Nowadays, even in India, you can't find a dhotiwala unless you're in two places. One, Kolkata. Two, Pune. But I used to see them, and little did I know they were actually over here chasing after money. But I used to see them, and I thought, my God, these people look like they're coming from the spiritual world. They must be having so much deep wisdom. I used to think like this. So, actually Prabhupada said, I'm only one Indian, but I've taken this order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very seriously. Imagine what will happen if every Indian takes advantage of it. How many people are here from Telangana? Raise your hand. Telugu people? Okay. I know some of you, probably too many of you were shy to raise your hands, but I know that how you got here. You went to Chilakuru and you worshipped Visabalaji. So he has a plan, I'm seeing it. Everywhere I go in North America, it's mainly Telugu people now. They're thinking they're making the great escape, but actually he's got a plan, because here you can become Krishna conscious. The scriptures praise birth in Bharat Bhumi because the culture is there and because the Krishna consciousness has been practiced there, but actually nowadays Indians are so brainwashed. It's harder to become Krishna conscious in India than it is here. It's a wonder. I have lived in India for many years now. I see that as India becomes more and more like America, technologically, America becomes more and more like India, ethically. But anyway, somehow or other, to make our lives perfect, janma sartha kori, how do we do that? Sadhu sangha, sarva shastra koi, lava matra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. Sarva siddhi hoy comes from this sangat. When we associate with persons with whom we can relate, but whose faith is deeper than ours, then our faith becomes deeper also. How? We become inspired, we get good directions, we try to make some advancement in spiritual life, and we see the result. When the result comes, and the faith is deepened, then you reinvest in the same process, you make very rapid advancement. And you can become perfect in this way. 3 things. He asked me to speak about 3 things. So I'll tell you 3 things. 3 things that Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upashitaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavam agataha. Krishna says, when you conquer raga and bhaya and krodha, what does that actually mean? If we have this Bhagavad Gita, we can study Srila Prabhupada's purport. I don't know how much time we have. but, sorry? It's a unique purport in all of Srila Prabhupada's books. He talks about attachment, fear, and anger, but he describes them in a certain way. What does attachment mean? What are we attached to, actually? We're attached to gross sense gratification, and to some degree we're attached to subtle sense gratification, that is, subtle things like philosophy and art and maybe poetry and things of this nature. Subtle things, movies, this kind of thing. So we have attachment to sense gratification. Material life, we have attachment to chasing after material dreams, attachment. That's called raga. Raga. So then, bhaya. What does bhaya mean? Bhaya is fear. What are we afraid of? These are the three stumbling blocks that Krishna mentions. I should translate the verse first of all. He says, being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So we have attachment to sense gratification. That's a stumbling block. It's considered to be a stumbling block in spiritual advancement. But worse than that, because it's more subtle, we have fear. What kind of fear prevents us from making spiritual advancement? Does anybody know? What are we afraid of exactly? Srila Prabhupada has unique insight, which he shares in his purport. He says we're afraid of personal, spiritual individuality. Spiritual individuality that's also personal and that is personal forever. We're actually afraid of that. If you look around in today's spiritual marketplace, if I dare to use that word, what do you find? People are offering all kinds of spiritual paths, and all of them, virtually all of them, are impersonal, is it not? How many are actually offering pure devotion to Krishna? Maybe Pushti Marg, maybe some Sri Vaishnavas, Madhvas once in a while. That's about it. Everybody's talking about some vague jyoti of some sort. Something vague. Impersonal. Because we're afraid of personal existence. Why would we be afraid of eternal personality? Well, what is it about that scares us? Huh? Current situation. What is our current situation? Raise your hand if you have any kind of relationship with anyone at all. Of course, we all do. We have family relationships, we have friendships, we have worker and client relationships. And pretty much all of them cause us distress on occasion, is it not? Yes. Because the hearts are infected with so many ugly things. Naturally, when you try to deal with someone, it causes friction in the relationship. And this is what we identify as personal existence because we have no other frame of reference. And when somebody comes along and says, this personality is eternal, you go, oh my God, I don't want that. Let me take shelter of nirvana instead. I'd rather absorb my mind in a candle flame or something. You notice, why is Buddhism so popular nowadays? And what kind of people take to Buddhism? I mean, nothing against Buddhism. I'm talking any impersonal path. The likes of, Tina Turner and, really, people who lead really pungent lifestyles, they get burnt out by that sinful mode of existence, and they just want some time out. That's what nirvana actually means. It means time out. It's like snuffing out a flame. Just annihilate yourself. So we're afraid of spiritual personality because all of our experience of personal relationships is that they're dysfunctional. Our expectations are never met. Because we have unrealistic expectations. Does that have anything to do with the fact that we're ignoring death? Or why we're chasing after dreams even though we know that we're going to die here? We're not supposed to be here. We're fish out of water. That's why our relationships don't work. We got the wrong idea. Fundamentally wrong idea. Okay, so we're attached to sense gratification. We're afraid of personal existence. And what's the third one? I said three of them. Raga, bhaya, and krodha. What does krodha mean? So So what does that mean actually? According to Srila Prabhupada's explanation, krodha actually means, well, where does anger come from? Why do you get mad? There's an expectation that's not being met. And there's a word for this. When our expectations are not met, we call this? Frustration. Frustration. What is it that frustrates us? We've heard so many things about God from all different people. Some of them want to fly jetliners into skyscrapers. Some of them want to tell us to surrender to the candle flame. Somebody wants to... So many. It's like Asta television. I remember when Asta television first came out. One day it's the Buddhists, then it's the Sufis, then it's Hare Krishna, then it's, Rajneesh, and so many things. Even a theologian will become thoroughly confused. So we've heard so many things, and as if the ideas weren't contradictory enough, then we find that people are saying one thing and doing another thing. Isn't it? So many scandals. That's why they're all female gurus nowadays, because all the men are after sex life. Practically speaking, we see it. So, this is frustrating. It gets us angry, and people just hang up on the whole idea. They just don't even want to go there. This is frustration. Krodha. Srila Prabhupada writes very nicely in his purport. He says, this is a kind of fearful stage of life. Here's what he says. There are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all, being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation. They become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there's no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. He recapitulates here as well. He says, some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause because of fear. And some of them disbelieve in everything, being frustrated or angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. This last class of men sometimes take shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their affective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. One has to get rid of all three stages of material consciousness: attachment to material life, fear of spiritual personal identity, and conception of void that arises from frustration. So how do we do that? He then very brilliantly quotes Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which outlines the stages in which anyone makes spiritual advancement. Adau. In the beginning, what is there? Shraddha. Adau Shraddha. In the beginning, you have to have some degree of faith. How many people have faith? Raise your hand if you have faith. Okay, people are going like this. Yeah, okay. Faith. Actually, everybody has faith. How much faith does everyone have? Some people have more, some people have less. Is that correct? No, it's not correct. Everybody has 100% faith. It is only a question of where you're investing that faith. You have 100% of it. You have your capacity. And that capacity is invested somewhere. So the initial stage is to introspect a little bit and understand, where am I actually investing my faith? If you do this, you'll see, my faith is invested in the stock market, my faith is invested in my children, my faith is invested in my boss, in my dentist, in my lawyer, in whatever it is. But we all have faith. So once we can understand where we've allocated our faith, this is called, what do we call this? You want to distribute your assets in many different...
Asset allocation.
Asset allocation, exactly. So we're talking about faith allocation here. Where is it going? Where is your faith actually going? You have to introspect like this. Once you can see where your faith is going, then you can begin thinking, what should I actually be doing with this faith? Where should I be investing my faith? You see? Then, what is the next line of the verse? Adau shraddha tadaha sadhu sangha atha bhajana kriya. in sadhu sangha, the association of saintly persons, automatically you will be engaged in bhajana kriya. Bhajana kriya means the activities of devotion. What are the activities of devotion? We hear, we chant, we remember, we offer prayers, we worship the deity. So many, nine processes are mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's called bhajana kriya. When we do this consistently, then what happens? Anartha nivritti. All the ugly things within our hearts, all the things that sour our relationships, all the illusions that cause us to ignore impending death, all the infection within our hearts that cause us to be attached, to be fearful, to be frustrated, these things are all dissolved slowly, slowly as we engage in bhajana kriya. That's called anartha nivritti. And then what happens after that? Nishtha. We become firmly fixed in bhakti. At that point, there's no more obstruction. Actually, people think that spiritual life is difficult. It is difficult. In the beginning. Only in the beginning. If we push through this process of anartha nivritti, by dint of good association, with knowledge, as we were discussing, then we can overcome all the difficulties of spiritual life. Because it's only in the beginning stage. We're not even halfway through the stages now. Nishtha means we're strong. When we're strong like this in bhakti, what happens next? Something arises. What is that? Ruchi. Ruchi. Real deep taste. Not the kind of taste that brings us here once every few months. But real deep taste. Taste, like we all have a taste for breath, isn't it? I had a realization of this when I was in Vrindavan last April. In Vrindavan in April, we get a unique combination of pollen and wheat harvesting, the stuff goes in the air, and natural dust combined with pollution. These four things are just wafting through the air everywhere, and it makes it very hard for people like me to breathe. So I had asthma, and I was thinking, naively, let me try some Ayurvedic treatment for asthma. Ayurvedic treatment usually doesn't work good for acute things, for your information, because it's slow. But it works good for chronic things. So I ended up in the hospital. They had to put me on a ventilator with nebulization, because I couldn't breathe. So then I realized at that time, I'm really attached to oxygen. People, when you ask them, what is the most important thing in your spiritual life? What are they going to say? When we're talking about spiritual advancement, what is the absolutely number one thing, primary thing you need to put attention into in order to make spiritual advancement? What is it? Association. Association with devotees? Anything else? Chanting? Anything else?
Sincerity.
Utsaha, humility, or?
Sincerity.
Sincerity. You're all wrong. The most important thing is oxygen. No bonds, no bansuri. So, no, these are all correct answers, of course, but we have to be a little bit sensible and understand that we're in a very precarious position. A little hole about the size of the pencil, that's what your whole life depends on that. Health is very important. Very, very important. Anyway, so spiritual advancement, we get some ruchi, and then from that ruchi is so strong, it becomes asakti. Asakti means, well, it's what we all feel towards oxygen. 2-3 seconds, if you have asthma and you can't take a breath, you're gone. That is asakti. So how many of us can raise our hand and honestly say that we feel that attached to chanting Hare Krishna? No, we don't. We don't miss a meal, but we Hare Krishna mantra later when I'm old. You see? So this is asakti, and then when asakti, this real deep attachment, the way we're attached to breath or water, very fundamental things in this material world. That attachment leads us to bhava. And Krishna says, Puta mad bhavam agata. When you've conquered these three enemies, attachment, fear, and anger, manmaya mamupasata, bahavo jnana tapasa puta. And you've taken the austerity to develop knowledge, then you become purified. Puta means purified. And what happens when you're purified? Mad bhavam agata. You get bhava bhakti. And bhava bhakti is only the beginning of prema bhakti. Prema bhakti is the ultimate perfection of spiritual existence. So, jnana tapasa. I go all over the country. I find this Bhagavad Gita as it is in people's houses. And half the time the Bhagavad Gita in people's houses is shrink-wrapped. What does that mean? It means they've left Bhagavad Gita as it is. So, Bahavo Jnana Tapasa, by the austerity of knowledge. Ramanujacharya writes in his commentary on this verse. What is that? Jnana Tapasa? Two things. Number one, you have to open up the book and actually read it. It's an austerity to take off the shrink wrapping and to open the book and actually read it. It is an austerity in the beginning when our faith is weak. That's a fact. But if we take that austerity and the intelligence becomes purified and we actually apply these instructions and become realized, then there's more austerity waiting. What is the second aspect of the austerity? You know this. He says you have to take the austerity of sharing this understanding with those who don't have it yet. This is what we've already described. Janmasartha kori kora parupakar. Parupakar. You have to benedict someone else with this understanding, because the human form of life is a short window of opportunity, my friends. It's only going to last a few decades maximum. What are you going to do with it? And what happens to you if you don't have any contact with this process? Compassion. To feel compassion for others and to share this knowledge with others. But the knowledge is not always well received. Have you noticed? Sometimes, if you don't believe me, go into your office on Monday morning and just give a copy of Bhagavad Gita to your boss and say, I want you to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, and surrender your life to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's probably not going to work out so easily, you see. So it's austere. You have to find the ways and means to make it appropriately, to inject appropriately into others' lives, because sometimes they're not receptive. When a person is attached to his dream, pashyannapi na pashyati, doesn't want to see what he sees. This is the real problem, isn't it? You can wake somebody up when they're actually asleep, but you'll never wake up a person who's only pretending to sleep. Never. You see? But people actually know what's right and what's wrong, but they don't want to admit it. This is the problem. Therefore, Ramanujacharya says, knowledge is an austerity. So here Krishna says, when you take the austerity of assimilating this knowledge and sharing this knowledge, both of which are difficult to do, then you become purified, and then you get bhava bhakti. So these three things, attachment, fear, and anger. Now, in the Kali Yuga, we're very fortunate. Why? Because this process has been expedited, specifically tailored for the present age. What is the characteristic of the Kali Yuga? Nobody has any good karma. Nobody has any good luck. Nobody lives a long time. Nobody's inclined for spiritual life. Nobody's got proper guidance. We have all disadvantages working against us. Therefore, the process has to be made real simple. And what is that simple process? We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The chanting itself is very easy, and all the philosophy is only really meant to direct our efforts at chanting, because it has to be done a certain way. A certain way. If you don't do it you have to produce a certain kind of consciousness And when you chant in that consciousness, then that chanting will liberate you immediately. It's described like this. Sadhya. Immediately. Apanna samsritim ghoram. Ghoram. What does ghora mean? Ghor. Ghanana ghanana ghanta ghora. What does it mean? Ghora means horrendous. This material world is a horrendous place. Yanama vivisho grinnan. When you take the name in a helpless state of mind, understanding the horrendous nature of this world, tato sadhya vimocheta. Immediately you are liberated. Why? Yad bibheti swayam bhayam. Because fear itself is afraid of this holy name. The problem is that we don't believe that this world is horrendous yet. But when we get old, then we usually wise up a little bit. Because we've seen some things. What kind of things will you see in this world? It never turns out the way you expect. That is a warning to anyone who's under 50. It's not going to turn out the way you expect. That is absolutely guaranteed. I'll tell you a story and then I'll stop. This is a story you won't forget. This is a true story. It was reported a few years ago in the news. In South India, Kerala, sometimes people go on vacation to the backwaters of Kerala. You can rent boats. They used to do this in Kashmir as well, but if you go to Kashmir, they'll kill you. So nobody does that anymore. So now they go to the Kerala backwaters. So one family was doing that. Whole family is there. Grandmother, grandfather, grandchildren, kids, parents, everybody. Happy, happy. And a little girl is playing in the boat and she's, waving her finger in the water and it's a nice sunny day and everybody's just having a fine time. They're going to have a picnic. Beautiful scenery. Everything auspicious. Until the girl found that there was a crocodile clamped on the end of her arm.
Oh.
And this crocodile is thrashing in the water and the girl is screaming and instantly the whole situation was galvanized into one of terror. And the whole family, they don't know what to do. They're all arguing about what to do. The boatman is saying he's trying to beat this crocodile with his oar. And the crocodile's still not letting go, even he's beating him hard. And meanwhile, they're all standing up in the boat. They're running around here and there. The boat is filling up with water. And because the girl is bleeding, and the blood in the water, all the crocodile's friends are swimming over, they see the lunch is ready. Finally, this boatman said, look, this boat is filling up with water, and you know what we have to do. Something has to be done. This situation it's not sustainable. Kind of like when you live in a world in which less than 5% of the world consumes more than 60% of the resources. It's not really replicable worldwide. It's not going to work. You have to face that at some point. Anyway, so he told them, you're going to have to decide what to do about this. This is your daughter. I mean, it's either she goes or we all go because the boat's already sinking. Now do something. What would you do? You can't even think about it. It's unthinkable. So eventually they had to make a decision, and the decision that they made was not pretty. They had to sacrifice their daughter. That's what they did. Samsritim ghoram. The world is a horrible place. Now the real coup de grace here is this. This is a true story. Before they sacrificed the daughter, they're very carefully picking off all the gold jewelry and ornaments. Every 10 feet in South India there's a billboard for jewelry. Have you noticed? Those of you from South India, you've seen it. So this is Atmana Samsritim Ghoram. We've fallen into this horrid place, terrible place. These things happen. They happen. Nobody plans these things. This family had no intention of the vacation ending this way. And these things happen to us and they traumatize us to such a degree that we never forget about them. It changes you, this world. It's a dangerous place. The advice is to get out now. And Therefore, Srila Prabhupada took it upon himself, having assimilated this knowledge by his own austerity. He took it upon himself to share it with all of us. While this world slept, Srila Prabhupada stayed up, writing this Bhagavad Gita as it is. I've already mentioned so many other editions of Bhagavad Gita, but they never made one person Krishna conscious. There are many ways to interpret Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Many different interpretations of Bhagavad Gita. But what do they all agree about at the end? Arjuna is going to do what? What is Arjuna going to do at the end of this discussion? He's going to fight. Nobody argues this. In other words, Bhagavad Gita is meant to inspire surrender to Krishna. Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight. Arjuna says, Karishye vachanam tava. I'll do what you said. That is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. And yet hundreds of Bhagavad Gitas, they've not made one person Krishna conscious in this way. Yet this one Bhagavad Gita, this has made hundreds of thousands of people Krishna consciousness. Hundreds of thousands of people. Africa mein, Russia mein, India mein, America mein, everywhere. Antarashtriya Shri Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. मतलब कि इस भगवद गीता में कोई विशेष शक्ति होगी. क्या शक्ति? Bhakti Shakti. Bhakti ki Shakti. So that Bhakti Shakti comes from following the standard process. Evam parampara praptam, pariprashnena seva, chanting, following in good association, becoming purified in archanavriti ityadi. And we will see, it is possible to give up these three things. What does Krishna say about giving up raga, bhaya and krodha? Bohovo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamani. Many people in the past have done this. And many people in the recent past have done this. Recent past means within our generation. It can be done. So just by surrounding ourselves with association that will encourage this effort, and by personally making the effort to serve through chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then we will ourselves traverse the same path. Srila Prabhupada had a Parker pen. Do they still make Parker pens? It's like a fine off his pen. So Srila Prabhupada was looking at his pen one day, and he saw that it said Parker. So then he showed it to the gentleman who was with him, and he said, Parker. He said, this pen is Parker pen. He was writing his books. He had this transcendental vision. This is Krishna consciousness, practical. So that was his example. And one Indian made his life perfect through following Krishna consciousness, and look, we're all sitting here today. How many people here? 50 people. And that's just one city, one state, one country, maybe one universe. We don't know where he's going now, what he's doing. So many. Okay, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prediction, so it will be. But if we're intelligent, Bhagavatam says, Yajanti hi sumetasa. In this Kali Yuga, the intelligent people, they take to this chanting process. I'm going to stop here. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Yeah.
Prabhu, you said that this verse that you put in first in the perspective,
That's in the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is that? The second canto, is it? I don't remember. I think it's maybe it's first or second canto. I don't remember the number actually. But the Sanskrit is Dehapatya kalatradishu atma sanyeshu asaswati tesham pramitanithanam pashannapi na pashyati. Very famous verse. Very, very deep verse also. Okay, anything else? Yes.
So we said that to perfect our life and then so how much perfect we have to be before we start to perfect?
This is a good question. Srila Prabhupada said you should not preach more than you have actually realized. Whatever you actually know, that you should preach. You should not attempt to preach something that is over your realization. So, if somebody asks you questions about how they can enter into the Ras Leela, you have to be honest and say, I have not realized that much. And, even if you've not actually come to the level of even Brahmabhuti, Sakshat Parokshanubhuti, directly realizing that you're not your body, then at least you say, these Hare Krishna people, they're very saintly people, I go to the Sunday feast, I like the prasadam, whatever, but according to your realization. Actually, most people in this world, they really can't accommodate too much knowledge. Those who take the austerity of knowledge upon their shoulders and try to share it with others, they see that people are mostly not even looking for knowledge. So, it's okay. But whatever inspiration you have, if you can share that, and whatever encouragement you can give others to take up this process, that is the best thing to do. It's not so much about enlightenment as it's about inspiration. Inspiring others and directing their efforts. Is that okay? All right. Anything else? Yes.
The incident you mentioned about the little child, the remembrances of the Smashana Vairagya. So, that doesn't mean that the rest of the family will turn philosophical after the event.
Yeah, that's a problem in this world. We're so heavily conditioned by Maya, and our intelligence is so much we double click on our intelligence so much of the time that even we go through these traumatic experiences, and that's why we have to go through them again and again. This world is meant for only being kicked and smashed. Actually, I'm sorry if it sounds crude, but Srila Prabhupada gives the analogy of the ass in Vrindavan. You see so many asses. Gadha. So the Gadha comes, one of my godbrothers, he said that, his wife divorced him and left Krishna consciousness. So he had to figure out, what am I going to do now? So he was sitting on the bank of the Yamuna, and he was meditating on his life and what to do about it. And then he said he saw this ass approaching a she-ass, and he came from behind and tried to jump. And the she-ass just, both hind legs, full blast, right in the face. BAM! And the ass shook his head. He wandered around dizzy for a few moments. And he sat down and thought about it. And after about 5 minutes, he came back and tried again. And again, the she-ass hit him with both barrels right in the face. BAM! Again and again and again and again and again, he saw this happening. And then he finally figured it out. He said, why am I doing the same thing? You see? So this is why we have to hear every day, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, because we get covered over by the illusory energy. And we have to be, it's not enough even to hear. We don't actually learn from hearing. We learn by undergoing the experience. And when we're really rascals, even when we undergo the painful experience, we still don't learn. You see? So, samay lagega. That's why we have to be patient and determined and enthusiastic and follow carefully in good association, leading a clean life. Then we make spiritual advancement. Otherwise, we may not learn. Is that okay? Generally, we have to be kicked again and again and again and again. Material nature is so arranged; it's automatic. You don't have to go out looking for miseries; they will come. All right. So no more questions. We'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glory to Shri Prabhupada.